So I got this lens secondhand with a camera that I just recently bought. And I know a lot of people have this lens, but it isn't any good. And should you sell it and get something else? Hey, what's going on guys? My name's Jason Morris. I hope you are doing really well today. And just today I wanted to talk about this lens right here. This is the 55-210 4.5-6.3 telephoto zoom lens. Now this lens is usually sold as a kit lens style when you pair it with the 16-50 kit lens. Honestly, this color is pretty damn ugly. I mean, you wouldn't really buy this. I don't know who actually would buy this. I mean, unless you had a similar color body, but it's not exactly aesthetically pleasing. But obviously it's not about what this thing looks like. It's about how it performs in photo and video. Now, having a zoom range of 55-210 is absolutely massive. Now that is equivalent to 82.5 to 315 in full frame. That is massive, especially if you do want to photograph wildlife or even long distance sports. Now it also has that OSS, which longer focal lengths is really handy to have so you won't have those micro jitters. Now, if you do want to capture images a lot further away, this would be great for you, especially if it is video as well, because it does make a big difference. Actually, let me show you exactly what this thing looks like with the video with OSS on and off. Now you can see the OSS works really well, specifically if your camera doesn't have IBIS, which obviously the A6400 doesn't. Now this is what it looks like without OSS. And this is what it looks like with OSS on. Now you can see the difference. It's massive difference, specifically if you are zoomed right out to 210 millimeters. Now this could be vital if you're doing a lot of long range video work on some sports or wildlife, or even just photography as well, so you don't get that sort of blurry image. Now having that larger zoom range will really give you some decent bokeh as well. Even though it's at 6.3 at the longest focal range, the subject will actually pop from the background and give you some decent bokeh, as you can see here. Now just remember that bokeh is all dependent on the focal length, the aperture, and obviously the distance you are away from the subject. So if you have a subject that's closer, you zoom in a lot closer, you're gonna have a blurrier background. Now let's have a look at the autofocus before we check out the image quality. Now you can see here the autofocus is actually quite snappy, which is really good. The only caveat is that when you get to 210 millimeters, it does seem to lag a little bit of time. So if you go at really close focusing distance and then far away, it does struggle and takes a little bit of time. That is with video anyway. With photo, it's a little bit different. It tends to be a little bit sharper and snappier, which is perfectly fine. And just to note that this is also version 2 firmware. So just make sure if you do get a secondhand lens, make sure the firmware is up to date. Even on your current lenses, just Google to see what your firmware is as well. So all you need to do is just go into the settings, go into the firmware and see what the firmware is up to. But when it comes to the other focal lengths, like I said, it is actually quite fast and just normal speed. But also as well, don't forget that autofocus is all dependent on which camera system you're using and which camera you're using. The A6400 is actually quite fast, so it should perform at its best. All right, well, let's see what the image quality is like through the whole focal range. So I don't want to dive too deep into image quality here. Now you won't get this lens mainly because it's image quality, but more so because it's focal range. But it's safe to say all the way through from 55 to 210, the center sharpness is actually pretty decent, mainly because it starts at f4.5. So it should be sharp technically. But what you see throughout the whole focal length and full aperture ranges, the corner sharpness does deteriorate a little bit. I mean, it is still very acceptable though. And it obviously displays heavy sharpness loss at the highest aperture range as usual due to lens diffraction. And there is also minor barrel distortion through the full range and just a little bit of vignetting, but if you turn the profile corrections on, it will be able to adjust for that. Now lastly, let's have a look at the minimum focusing distance. Now the minimum focusing distance is at 1 meter. Now that's not too bad. It does allow you to get quite close to the subject, but not as close as you would with a macro lens or obviously a wide angle lens as well. But it's not too bad. The reason why you would get this is probably for long range sports or wildlife anyway, so you're gonna be quite far away from the subject. You're just trying to get a little bit closer without disturbing the piece. But in conclusion, this lens is actually quite decent. If you are buying it with the 16-50, then you've got the 55-210, so you really do have a long range to cover. You can get the single lens, so you can get an 18-135, 3.5-5.6. I've done a review on that before. You can click on the link in the description below or up there as well, but you can check that one out. I'm going to do a comparison between this and the other lens as well in another video, just to see what the difference is like and see the pros and cons of having either lenses. But other than that, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please hit that like button. That would be absolutely amazing. Comment below if you do have this lens and if you think it's okay, or what do you use it for. Other than that, my name's Jason Morris. Guys, stay safe, stay happy, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Let's get it.